What's going on, everybody? Brezzy43 here, coming at you with our next video. It's been a little while here, been about a week, maybe a little bit less than that, I'm not sure. I got to see my family over the weekend, which was nice, otherwise I've been actually playing quite a bit. I've played quite a bit on the ladder, so I left you all with the Sun variation of Calyrex Ice Rider with Calyrex, Mimikyu, Venusaur Torkoal, Butterfree, Landorus. And I was pretty pleased with that team overall. I think I made some mistakes with the team on day 2 of using it after I got back into Master Ball, and it kind of turned me off to the team a little bit. I think it's a good team. I think Calyrex Ice is very good. I think that shell could potentially be good, but I think I was piloting it poorly that second day, and B, it might not be the best built Calyrex team that you can use. So that's just the reality of it. But it was a cool team. It featured Butterfree, which is something I really enjoyed using, and it had a couple of really nice, really cool modes for the team. So I switched back to the Laprazation team, and I've been playing a lot with it. I'm actually up to over 40 games this series so far, and I made a push back into top 1,000. I think I'm in the mid 700s, which is the highest I've been since that Trick Room team I used back in Series 6 or Series 6, yeah, with the bands. Yep. So that was the best team I've ever used, but this one feels very good as well, and I've made a push back into top 1,000. Hopefully, going to continue to climb from there. I want to talk about that team very briefly and some changes that I've made to it, some things I'm keeping in mind, and then I also want to talk to you all about the Sun matchups and the Sun teams. Sun is everywhere. People are using it all over the place, and we'll talk in depth about it after this brief little introduction about this team. So let's go ahead and jump in. For those of you that don't remember, this is the team that I was using, and this is the team that I have been using. This is my take on Laprazation. I have some really nice pieces here that I want to touch on really quick. If you do want to see a full talk about the team and how I built everything, there's a previous video for that. I just want to talk considerably about potential changes here. So the Lapras I've really liked so far. These moves I really like. Obviously I can't run Thunder with Raichu, but I'm a big fan of these moves. The only thing I might change is the HP investment. I might drop it down to 209, and then also redistribute a lot of these 80 EVs back into bulk, but maybe pick up a couple of more points here in speed, just because I want to make sure that I can outspeed Incin. I haven't run into underspeeding many Incin yet, but I think that it could potentially happen. Having double fake out does help, so you don't get snarled or parting shotted or whatever, but sometimes you can't stop it. And Lapras's damage output is already so low, you don't need it to be even lower. So that's one consideration for Lapras. I'm still really happy with this Incin set. I'm probably not going to change it. It outspeeds my Lapras by 1. Good special defense investment. This spread right here lives. It lives Sacred Sword or Close Combat from Zacian, not in Aurora Veil, which is cool. The only thing that's knocked me out that I was surprised at was last night I got knocked out by a Dialga. It was only at +1 because I had snarled it the turn before, and then they activated a weakness policy, and I went down to a Max Quake from +1 Dialga. So I was surprised by that. So maybe that's a roll, or maybe we need to redistribute some EVs or something. I'm not sure. Not many things one-shot Incin is what I'm trying to say. So a little bit surprised by that. Moltres, optimized for bulk. Nothing really special about this. This Amoonguss, I actually had a couple of considerations for this. It came up recently a couple of times where being minimum speed was actually more harmful than it wasn't. Obviously, if the opponent's team is Trick Room, you want to be as slow as possible so you can make sure that Amoonguss moves first. But I also ran into a couple of situations where I had left something paralyzed and needed to outspeed it with Amoonguss and couldn't. And they were like mediocre speed tier things, and I just don't really remember what the situation was outside of Amoonguss moving second despite it. So Potentially not being minimum speed, but still not investing in it might be what I do, or maybe just changing the nature. I don't know. What does it even bring us to? It only gives us 4 points. So, but I've liked this bulk a lot. I might consider Focus Ash instead of Koba, and I'm still also considering Eject Button as a potential change here. Big fan of this Zacian spread still. I haven't wanted to change this ever. It still outspeeds what it needs to outspeed, and it lives a lot of attacks. Things it should not live, it survives. So that's been really, really nice so far. And then Raichu, I did actually make one change to Raichu. I dropped 16 Spitaki Vs and I distributed 8 of them to both of these to make it a bit bulkier. This Raichu survives. I may end up moving some of these defense EVs into special defense or HP because I need Raichu to survive or to help me out more in the Sun matchup. So more on that here now. So this is the team. This is what I've been running. I think I have 14 losses, which means I have 26 wins or 27 wins. So, and from those 14 losses, I've only attributed 8 of them to this team. I was 9-6 or 10-6 with that Sun Calyrex Ice team. So now we're being now that makes us 16-8, 17-8, something like that with this team. So I've really liked it. It's a really fun team to use. People are prepared for it, so keep that in mind as well. But I wanted to talk to you all about Sun. So Sun is an archetype that I have personally used a fair amount in my time playing VGC, and I know a bit about as well. And also it's seen a huge resurgence in this last RVGC tournament, where 3 of the top 4 teams featured a Groudon, which is not common, or wasn't common prior to that, at least from people could tell. And I've seen some streamers using it. Shout out to Edu. He was using Groudon for a while as well. So these teams are very dynamic. These teams are very they present a variety of options, and they're very difficult to account for everything. So I'm going to talk about some Sun stuff here. So this is a general core of Sun here. This is a team that I actually faced earlier today. Venusaur, Groudon for the drought, Charizard, Thundurus, Porygon, and Glastrier. So this team has a Trick Room mode. This team has ways of punishing Intimidate with, this was Defiant, and then it has a really offensive package. Now this is, in my opinion, not necessarily the best Sun team, but this was one that I remembered facing earlier today. So why is Sun so good? What does it do? Well, prior to Groudon, we had Torkoal. Torkoal is one of the slowest Pokemon in the entire game. So Torkoal paired nicely with Trick Room, and Venusaur is a very dynamic Pokemon. Often on Best of One ladder, you will see Protect. You won't always see Protect. You will see Leaf Storm, and you will see Sludge Bomb. These are 2 moves that you always see. The last 2 moves can be some combination of 4 moves. Sometimes people will run Earth Power. Sometimes people will run Sleep Powder. Sometimes people will run Weather Ball, and sometimes people will run Protect. The more popular ones I've seen recently have been Weather Ball and Sleep Powder, just skipping Protect. Some people run Assault Vest and skip Sleep Powder. But Sleep Powder is one of the reasons why that makes this team scary. Venusaur can be a very offensive threat. Base special attack 100 is not unreasonable at all. Its speed gets doubled inside of Sun, and it's a reasonably bulky Pokemon, at least on the special side of things. So trying to figure out if Venusaur is going to Dynamax or not is a very scary decision you find yourself facing often. Is turn 1, is this Venusaur going to max or not, and what should I do? If I max and my opponent puts my Dynamax Pokemon to sleep, then I'm in trouble. If I don't max, I potentially get put to sleep anyway, or they max and they run me over. Charizard it hits very, very, very high offensive stats when you start factoring in Solar Power plus Life Orb. So you end up with Solar Power boosted, Life Orb boosted, Sun boosted, Blast Burn boosted, Max Wildfires, which after all the boosts is just insane damage. Some people, not everyone runs Blast Burn. Some people run Heat Wave, but Blast Burn's been really common. Groudon is one of those restricted Pokemon, being base 90. It's not unreasonable inside of the Trick Room, so it often comes with a Trick Room mode, though not always. So this team can be very, very difficult to beat. Let's talk about the offensive pieces. These are some of the most common offensive pieces on the Sun teams. You end up with Venusaur. Venusaur could be holding a variety of different items. Sometimes you see Focus Sash. Sometimes you see Koba Berry. Sometimes you see Life Orb. Sometimes you see... I think those are the three main ones. Wide Lens I've seen occasionally to give you a 10% accuracy boost to your sleep powders. Obviously, it's got a bunch of different moves it can learn, like we talked about: Sleep Powder, Protect, Leaf Storm, Sludge Bomb, Weather Ball, Earth Power, as well as potentially... I didn't know it got Outrage. That's weird. I think those are the main ones people are running. I don't see anything on here. Terrain Pulse is kind of cute. Maybe you can build some terrain into your team and give it like a psychic move or something like that. Charizard. I'd say, in my experiences playing against Charizard, the most common item for Charizard to carry is Life Orb. If they aren't running Life Orb, then there's a couple of other ones that is common. Walk-On Berry I've seen a bit of recently to help you against Regieleki. I've also seen Chardy Berry is still a decent option because you get so many boosts from Solar Power and Sun boosting your fire attacks. You don't necessarily need to run a damage boosting item, so Chardy Berry can help you survive rock coverage from, for example, Landorus, things like that. So that's Charizard. Really cool Pokemon, really good Pokemon. Most people are running Timid, Max Speed, Max Special Attack. There's no really reason to deviate from this. Charizard doesn't really have much bulk. 78's and 78's not great. 85's pretty okay, but 78 doesn't even hit that. You'd be sacrificing some offensive capabilities for that, which if you want to do that, that's totally fine. But I would recommend just sticking to Max. Venusaur, on the other hand, I skipped over this, unfortunately. Sorry. Venusaur has a bunch of different sets it can run. It can run Timid, Max Speed Out, Speed Alecki in the Sun. It can also go for more of a, like the one that we were using, where it hits, it's modest and it's bulky. I don't remember how much speed we were running. Maybe it was like this much. That seems right. And then this, I think this was my exact spread. Let me see. Let me throw it up here and see what it looks like. Yeah, this is just an example of one, but this is a bulky Venusaur that some people will run with Life Orb or with something else to help you survive more attacks, because running max speed is not often necessary. Sometimes helping you to survive more attacks is really good. Thundurus has been huge recently. Thundurus is everywhere. Assault Vest seems to be the most popular item now, and it's a really good staple of these Sun teams because of deterring intimidates away from Groudon via Defiant. But Assault Vest gives you Wild Charge, Fly, Superpower, and then it does get some decent coverage moves. It gets Crunch. Foul Play I've seen as well to help against the Zacian or the Calyrex Ice matchup. I've seen Iron Tail, I've seen Lash Out, I've seen I have seen U-Turn once, but it was kind of niche. I think that Foul Play or Lash Out would be where I would go next with this mon. Pretty straightforward. I don't know what the EV spreads are for when you're running Assault Vest. I don't know if it changes. I don't know if you still run max speed, max special, or max physical attack. I'm not entirely sure. Groudon, I think this is by far the most consistent Groudon set. I know that there's been some popular streamers that have been using wide lens like Edu and Fevzi, and these guys. This is a pretty safe Groudon spread to run. You can put a bit more into your like this. It all depends on what speed stat you want to hit, but I think maximizing Groudon for bulk is really good. You could run a minimum speed nature if you wanted, but I think allowing Groudon to synergize with your Airstream boosts is really nice. And Wide Lens takes these two very inaccurate moves, or I should say Precipice Blade's way more inaccurate than Rock Slide, but Rock Slide basically turns into 100% accurate. It turns into 99, and P-Blades turns into 93. So they both become much more accurate with Wide Lens. And you don't need the Fire move, obviously, because of Charizard. And the last mon I've been seeing on these teams a lot is actual just Glastrier or Calyrex if you're not using Groudon. If you're using Torkoal and you want to go for a Trick Room option, Calyrex is reasonable as well. I'll throw that one on here as well. And it just depends on if you choose Groudon for your restricted Pokemon or if you choose Calyrex. But depending on the item that's still available in your team, Glastrier can hold a lot of different things. We've seen Life Orb, we've seen Lumberry, we've seen Assault Vest, we've seen... technically we've seen Weakness Policy, but we've also seen White Herb. That's the one. Sorry, I took a second to think about that. White Herb allows you to reset Intimidate drops, which is really cool. Protect, Icicle Spear, high horsepower, close combat. Pretty straightforward spread. Nothing too fancy. And then some people will run a Steel move as well instead of close combat. Or if you're running AV, you run the Steel move. That's fine too. Calyrex is pretty similar, but if you're not running AV, the move Trick Room becomes pretty enticing. If you wanted to run Torkoal with Calyrex, I'd say it's pretty strong. I used it; it was really good. I've even seen some people drop the second stab move and they go for Glacial Lance plus high horsepower, and this gives you the best chance of hitting the most things. You lose to floating fire types, or not floating fire types, but well, yeah, kind of things that can pressure you that you can't hit super effectively. You struggle against a bit, but this is a pretty reasonable set. I don't know what you would run as an item necessarily. You could do Policy with Mimikyu still, but I think this is pretty reasonable. So yeah, these are the main offensive threats you see on Sun teams. Okay. So if you wanted to build a Sun team, using some combination of these is really nice. Generally, you don't see both Charizard and Thundurus on the same team, but sometimes it happens. If they don't have a Trick Room mode, then sometimes you will see both. Trick Room mode, they can answer the Trick Room with other components of their team. That's the main offensive pieces. Let's talk about some of the support pieces. So Porygon 2 seems to be the best Trick Room setter on these teams. I think if you're going to use Calyrex Ice, obviously Mimikyu is really good as well. But Porygon 2 has a ton of customability. Is that a word? It has a ton of customizability, maybe. Yeah, that might be the word I'm looking for. It gets Trick Room and Recover, and the last two moves you use are basically up to you. We've been seeing a lot more Trace lately than Download. Trace is a really unique ability to give you the possibility of copying Intimidate for one. Copying Prankster with something like Eerie Impulse is really cool. I think this was a set that somebody ran recently, and this set's crazy. Because it doesn't have a damage move, but this set makes a lot of sense for what's popular in the metagame right now. Being able to drop damage, foul playing things like Calyrex are really, really important. I have no idea what the spread is for these ones. I couldn't tell you, so I definitely don't go off of my expertise on that. But I'm just saying I have seen some of these sets at higher on the ladder that are seeing success. Foul play is a fantastic Calyrex Ice tech move. Eerie Impulse is really good at deterring special attackers if you're Trace. If you're not Trace and you go for Download, you could just remove Eerie Impulse and still run Tri-Attack. That seems fine too. But yeah, definitely some interesting stuff there. one of the best Trick Room setters in the format. Pairs really nicely with Glastrier, as well as whatever other Trick Room sweeper you might want to run. Mimikyu is also a potential candidate in this slot as well. We talked about Mimikyu in my last video, though, so we don't need to talk about it again as much as I would like to. Clefairy. I've been seeing a lot more Clefairy on these teams lately because it's a fantastic... It's not Magic Guard, sorry, it's Friend Guard. Friend Guard Clefairy with a Violet is a very bulky partner for Charizard, for other early Dynamax sweepers for that team. They really get a lot of mileage out of having the ability to redirect attacks, give helping hand boosts, and just kind of be annoying with Friend Guard. So Clefairy is a really good option for the support Pokemon for your team. I know that Edu has been using Tapu Fini, and we use Tapu Fini as well. I don't remember the spread. I know if you're going to run Icy Wind, you generally want to run a good amount of speed, and not as much special attack investment. But max HP is definitely where you want to be. You don't want to lose out on these phenomenal defenses by just not investing in the HP stat. But outside of Moonblast, Tapu Fini can be run however you want it to. Haze, Icy Wind, Taunt, Muddy Water, Scald, Screens. It gets both screens. It gets Trick. Excuse me. But the main thing we've been seeing recently, Heal Pulse as well, is that Tapu Fini has moved more into a support role rather than a setup, Calm Mind, end game sort of thing. Tapu Fini's kind of slid its way into the Corviknight slot of early VGC, where you play to an end game that you just got a couple boosts on Corviknight and it would just run through teams at the end game. Fini provides very good typing, same as Corviknight. Can switch into a lot of different attacks and just eat them up, get leftovers recovery, and stall out. It was very good at stalling out Dynamaxes. And so I don't think that set is as common anymore. I don't know if that's to say it's not good anymore, but I think that these other supportive sets are a bit more enticing, leaning harder into your restricted Pokemon and enabling your restricted Pokemon is kind of what you should be doing right now, because those Pokemon are cracked in half. So yeah, Tapu Fini is really popular on these teams. It's a good switch in. Having a water type on a sun team sounds like it might be counterintuitive, but I'm saying from experience, being able to switch in a Pokemon to water type attacks or opposing fire type attacks is really, really important. So having a Pokemon like Fini is great. Grimmsnarl. Been seeing a lot of Grimmsnarl back on ladder as well. This Pokemon did not get any worse. This Pokemon is still phenomenal, and it's still everywhere. Reflect and Light Screen are about the only common things you see now. I think that Spirit Break is still fine. I actually think Sucker Punch might be better. Sucker Punch is great against the Calyrex Shadow Rider, as well as proccing your own weakness policy on different things. And I've also been seeing a fair amount of Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave is a really good way to slow down the opponents and status them. It is only 90% accurate, but it's really good for that reason. If you didn't want to run the second attack, Thunder Wave is really good. But Grimmsnarl has always learned phenomenal moves, and it's really excuse me. It's really hard to choose. Sometimes it does get foul play as well, which is really good. It also gets different ways to proc weakness policy. So Taunt is a good one. Trick is a great one. So Screens seems really popular. Fake Tears is good too. So keeping all that in mind, Grimmsnarl is a really good Pokemon for a lot of these teams. Charizard inside Screens is great. Same with Trick Room Sweepers. So Grimmsnarl definitely something to consider. Umbreon is a really cool Pokemon right now. I've been seeing a lot of Umbreon on high ladder. I think the shiny looks kind of cool too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it does. So Umbreon is a really cool Pokemon that got access to Inner Focus through, or the Inner Focus buff made it better. Inner Focus makes you immune to Intimidate and immune to Fake Out. So you can run Umbreon. Umbreon, from my understanding, has always been pretty good in restricted formats just for being a bulky dark type. But these these defensive stats are insane. I have no idea how people are EVing this thing, but I know that Fevzi's been using it and seeing a lot of success. I know Moonlight, Foul Play, and Snarl are pretty standard. The last move could be Protect, could be, or Detect, could be Taunt, could be Yawn. Oh, Yawn is pretty popular too. Yeah, Yawn is pretty good. Being able to put something to sleep is really nice too. So this is Umbreon. Umbreon's really good on these teams. It helps against Trick Room. It helps against Calyrex. It helps against a lot of different stuff. It's very, very, very difficult to one-shot. Very difficult. And Foul Play gives it a really reasonable way to deal damage, which I like. So that's Umbreon. One of the last common ones I've been seeing recently is Sableye, actually. Sableye is a really interesting Pokemon that didn't see a lot of play in the last couple of series, but it did see a lot of play at the beginning of VGC. It's a really annoying Pokemon. It gets access to Quash and it's the only Pokemon that learns this move that can take advantage of it because of Prankster. Whoever you target with Quash must go last. Even inside of Trick Room, it must go last. So, really interesting, really cool move that Sableye gets access to. Will-O-Wisp is great. Fake Out is reasonable, and Sunny Day. I think this Pokemon also gets access to Foul Play. It does. So you could, if running these moves makes you nervous, you could also just run Foul Play. I got these moves straight from Fevzi. He used these moves actually against me in one of the battles we had recently. Sunny Day gave him a really reliable way to set up Sun without having to switch Groudon in. Fake Out was good at stopping some of other threats because it can't be faked out as well, being a ghost type. And Quash is pretty much, if you see a Sableye, you have to expect Quash. And Will-O-Wisp is a tech move. I know that this thing does get Ally Switch, but I don't like the move, so I don't want to use it. I think that the move gives the illusion of control over a game, and I could talk about Ally Switch in an entire video. But from a competitive standpoint, you will win games if you use the move, but I don't like to use the move because I don't like putting my opponent in a position to read me. I've played Magic for a long time, and the fewer options you give your opponent in Magic, the better. And the same ports over to Pokemon, in my opinion. The fewer choices your opponent has, the fewer decisions they get to make, the better it is for you. So that's why I don't like running the move. But if you want to run it, run it. That is the end of my Ally Switch rant. So those are some really good support pieces for it. Some more utility Pokemon that end up on the team. Assault Vest and Incineroar is really good right now. I think Assault Vest and Safety Goggles are two of the best items for Incineroar right now because of the Calyrex Pokemon preventing you from eating your own berries. This thing's great. Believe it or not, Incineroar didn't always get access to Parting Shot. That is a new move for Incineroar this game. During Gen 7, when it was used on Sword and Shield, or Sun and Moon, it used U-Turn, and that was the move that it ran. So U-Turn is still a fine option. It's not bad. Snarl is fine, or a more offensive Dark move is fine too, like Darkest Lariat. Flare Blitz and Fake Out are also pretty standard on Incins these days. Magneto-Lecky, this is a pretty straightforward Pokemon, not super difficult to use. You just Electro Web stuff, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt's really good. This set does make you a little bit weaker to Landorus, so keep that in mind. But this is a pretty standard Lecky, and it's not a bad Pokemon at all. It fits into these teams really nicely, giving speed control to Charizard for things that are faster than Charizard is really nice. Charizard should outspeed all things that a Lecky can Electro Web after an Electro Web drop. So that's a Lecky. Indeedee is the last one. I've seen a lot of Psychic Seed Indeedee recently just to make it really, really bulky and have it not go anywhere. But Psychic Surge, Protect, Follow Me, Helping Hand, Expanding Force. This thing's been around for a while, and it's always been run like this. Expanding Force gave it a really nice offensive move that it gets to take advantage of without... Normally, you'd want to invest in some amount of special attack because it's important that all of your Pokemon can do damage. Psychic Surge giving a boost to Expanding Force gives you a really nice offensive option without having to EV for it, which is really cool. So yeah, these are a lot of the Pokemon you'll see on teams, on Sun teams. I think Sun is a very good meta game call. If you want to use it, I think you should. I think it's a really strong option. It's a great archetype. I used it myself to qualify, and then unfortunately not qualify for Players Cup 2. I unfortunately didn't register correctly, despite getting a good enough record. So I missed my opportunity to play. But that team is great. That team was Charizard, Togekiss, Torkoal, Venusaur, Dusclops, T-Tar. So yeah, I think if you were to just take some of these Pokemon from most of these three categories here, you would end up with a pretty solid team overall. If you wanted to use Calyrex instead of Groudon, I would definitely recommend you take a look at Mimikyu. But yeah, excuse me. I've got the hiccups, I think. I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. So what are some checks that you can implement to beat Sun? How do you beat this team? And I think one of the really strong options right now is safety goggles. Now, Incineroar doesn't. None of these Pokemon really beat Sun on their own. They're good, good teams or good Pokemon to use against Sun, but you need some other components for your team as well. Safety Goggles Instant is a really good option for the Venusaur half of Sun. So if your opponent is not like our Sun team that I was using for a while that featured, it was Groudon, Thundurus, Venusaur, Feeny, Stakataka, and Incineroar. Safety Goggles Instant would have been very good against that team because outside of Groudon, there's no real way that they can pressure the Instant. They can't put it to sleep. They can't, and Sun boosted Flare Blitz hits Venusaur very, very hard. But Incineroar on its own is not as good against the Charizard component of the team because it doesn't meaningfully do anything to Charizard really, outside of maybe Snarl it if you have Snarl. So Incineroar is kind of like a pseudo check, but Safety Goggles helps you out a lot against the Venusaur, so you can't be put to sleep. Another one I've been seeing recently, sorry for the voice crack there. Another one I've been seeing recently is the Zapdos. Safety Goggles Zapdos has been rising up a little bit. Typing wise, it's phenomenal against something like Zacian. Resisting both of its stab is very, very good. It's still going to hit you very hard, obviously, but definitely helps you against Zacian typing wise. But Safety Goggles gives you a really nice option against Venusaur, and you get access to Heat Wave and Thunderbolt and Hurricane. So you've got some really strong options to hit the Venusaur. You've got stab boosted flying, super effective, and you've got potentially sun boosted fire, super effective. So Zapdos is a reasonable option. I think Moltres in general is okay, just because of the special defense stat. I don't think it's a great check unless if it's running Safety Goggles, it gets a lot better. The Moltres versus Charizard matchup to me is not quite where I want it. I've been trying to make that matchup a bit better. And Moltres itself doesn't really help you that much against it because it doesn't really hit that hard without a weakness policy or nasty plot. Berserk helps, but not as much as you would like. And yeah, but Safety Goggles does help, but I think it's a pseudo check. I think it's a bit like Incineroar because it matches up very, very well against the Venusaur. For us, if I was running this team still, and this was not a Safety Goggles, if it was weakness policy, Incin plus Moltres would be a great lead for me against Venusaur because Sleep Powder is only 75% accurate, and being able to ignore the sleep or being able to not take much damage from Venusaur's attacks are great. A couple of recent answers that have risen up in popularity are a couple of Dragon-type Pokemon, specifically Hydreigon. I think this thing might be one of the best counters to Sun in general. It's not, obviously you need to have a couple of other things going well for you, but This thing, being a dragon type like this, you resist fire. You have good base stat total because you're a pseudo legend. So you resist fire, you resist grass. I think you get hit neutrally by poison. Dragon doesn't resist it, neither does dark. But you're immune to ground still with levitate. And you actually resist electric, which is really big. So like that's one of the downsides of Moltres is by adding this flying typing, it's not as good for you defensively. You're weak to electric as well as rock. Hydreigon is not. So Hydreigon generally given what, and it can't really, so that means that you're immune to Precipice Blades. You don't care as much about Rock Slide. You don't care about fire moves as much. You don't care about grass moves, and you can't be hit by Earth Power. You can't be hit by electric attacks, so that really only leaves flying attacks to hit you. But these moves that you run here give you some really good game against things. Dynamax Hydreigon can hit Venusaur very, very hard with Sun Boosted Max Flare. So these are the moves that I would definitely recommend using if you were going to run Hydreigon. In terms of a spread, I don't think there's any reason to run max speed. There's a lot of things that outspeed you. I think Modest is pretty reasonable with a good amount of investment. The one difference between this thing and Moltres as well is that this thing can Dynamax right away and present a much more offensive front than Moltres can. Also keep in mind that Hydreigon does also do a very, very good job against Calyrex Shadow Rider as well. Something that some of these other Pokemon may not be able to do. So keep that in mind for sure with Hydreigon. The other one I've been seeing is actually Dragapult. Safety Goggles Dragapult has been something that I've been seeing some people do. I don't know much about the spread. I do know that these are the common moves. Dragon Darts, Dive, Fly, and Phantom Force are really good moves. I don't know the spread, but all I know about it is that people have been moving to Adamant Dragapult because there's really no reason to be running max speed. You do miss out on outspeeding timid 130s or max speed 130s, but they hit 200 stat. But that's not really a big deal. There are not that many of them that are running around, so it's not a huge deal for you. But Adamant Pult seems like a reasonable option with Safety Goggles because you've got Fly for this very similar reasons as Hydreigon. You've got resistances to all the elemental types as well as being able to mostly ignore Groudon. You can't, like, not being immune to ground does kind of suck, but this thing's a really good pairing with a Pokemon like Zacian because you can give Airstream boosts and Dragon Darts boosts to your Zacian. Defense drops to your opponent's Pokemon and Airstream boosts to your Zacian to get it to outspeed, which is really cool. So this is something that I would, one or more of these Pokemon on a team would be really, really sweet. Obviously, they can't all hold Safety Goggles, so you might have to improvise a little bit, but I think that this is a pretty reasonable, some pretty reasonable options against it. And also some weather teams. This was a team that I was fascinated by. Opposing weather is very, very good. And this team I saw somebody using on very high ladder showdown that looked phenomenal to me. So there's a lot happening here. You've got good typing. None of your typing really overlaps at all. You do have a pretty rough time against Zacian. Zacian does hit 1, 2, 3, 4 of your Mons super effectively. And you only have really Zapdos to help fight it. Kind of Politoed, but not really. But Zapdos with this person was running Zapdos Safety Goggles with Thunder and Hurricane to synergize with the Rain from Politoed. And then had Incineroar. I don't know the spread or the moves or anything. I do know that Porygon Z was not Life Orb, despite me thinking that it should be. So we should make it Life Orb. Excuse me. And then Calyrex. All I know about Calyrex is that it had Trick Room. And I don't know the item. The item might have been Life Orb on this thing. But Clefairy is a really, really nice Pokemon to go along with basically all of these. You've got Clefairy Porygon, which we've seen before, which is a really, really good duo together. And we've also seen Clefairy Calyrex recently, and it's very good here too. Friend Guard gives Calyrex even more bulk, and then Trick Room as well, allowing you to go for Follow Me Trick Room relatively safely. And then you can You can also give Clefairy defense boost, which is pretty nuts. And yeah, so this is a really nice duo. Zapdos is a really nice pairing with Clefairy as well, but also with Politoed. I think the Politoed does have Perish. If it doesn't have Perish, it probably should, because this is a pretty solid team for Perish. But Politoed synergizes with Calyrex as well, so you have a nice, you can weaken the fire moves that would be hitting Calyrex. But being able to switch in and reset weather, and then also take advantage of the weather in a couple of different ways is really nice. So I liked this team a lot. This Porygon is really cool. It did have Trick Room as well. And a Hyper Beam Dark Pulse is basically perfect coverage. The only thing that would resist both is like a Steel Fighting type, but even then, adaptability, Hyper Beam does a ton of damage. So, yeah, it's pretty strong. So, yeah, this was a really cool team that I really liked. And one of the other ones recently that I saw was a Dracozolt with Sandrush alongside a T-Tar. I think this person, or some people have been running Assault Vest on this thing lately. I think that's fine. Safety Goggles could also be okay too, to help. This thing does kind of provide a bit of a sun answer, because you actually resist everything except the Groudon and the ground moves. So you've got resistance to flying, you've got a resistance to fire, you got a resistance to grass. Bolt Beak hits the Charizard very, very hard, and Aerial Ace hits the Venusaur very, very hard. So I did go ahead and take a look at the spread. I do know that Adamant with Sandrush being the new ability for this thing, you don't have to run a lot of speed. 132 hits 112, which allows you to outspeed Calyrex in inside sand. I wonder if you can hit Regieleki. Let's take a look quick. I don't think Alecki matters as much because you quad resist it. I know it drops your speed, but it's not a huge deal. I don't anticipate. 277. You'd have to go Jolly, but I really don't love Jolly, and you only outspeed it by 1. So you could run Jolly. I don't love Jolly though. Like I said, I think you really want to be adamant. If you're going to be running an item like Safety Goggles or Assault Vest, you really want to make sure that you can deal the most damage possible, especially since you're weak to Intimidate. So I would recommend not running Jolly and just not worrying about Regieleki, sticking with this Adamant 132 outspeeds Calyrex Shadow, and it still gives you 124 EVs to build around with bulk. And then T-Tar is a really good sand setter for you. You can position around the ground types if you need to, but both of these Pokemon are pretty good against Sun historically. So yeah, the last thing I wanted to touch on real quick is some considerations for my Lapras team. So going back to my Lapras team real quick, not that one, this one. This team, it doesn't have an awful time against Sun. It does have a rough time against Groudon specifically. So Raichu provides some interesting nuzzle speed control for me. But if I don't want to bring a Moongus to the Sun battle. So if I bring Zacian, like I always want to, Incineroar and Raichu, I bring 3 ground weaknesses altogether. So having Moltres makes a lot of sense, but Lapras is also quite good against a lot of the other components of Sun. Lapras can hit the Charizard super effectively. Actually, Life Orb Lapras does KO Charizard, not inside of Sun, but you can nuzzle it and kill it before anything happens. And that came up for me a couple of times. And it doesn't have a terrible time against or against Venusaur either, with double Fake Out. But I'm potentially considering one of these 3 Pokemon. I think Dragapult or Hydreigon with Safety Goggles would both be really, really solid. I forgot to add the last move here. One of these would be very, very good. synergy wise with the team. I wouldn't really be missing that much. I potentially could tech Nasty Plot here if I wanted to synergize a bit better with the Moongus. This was a spread that I found that was shared to me that I don't know what the spread does, but this was something that somebody did very well in a tournament with, so there must be something here. But Flamethrower, Earth Power, and Dark Pulse are really good coverage moves. And Dragapult would give us a very similar effect as well. And then also that Lumberry Landorus set that I was considering running. This one is Fevzi's spread, 196 speed, outspeeds Zacian at +1. And then this bulk allows you to live G-Max Wildfire from Zard. So a couple of options there. I may have to just rethink how I play the matchup, because if I have any of my Pokemon go down too early, then I potentially end up in a really difficult situation where I have a bunch of ground weeks in the field. It requires positioning, it requires a lot, and so yeah, that's the only downside about having a soft Trick Room or a soft Sun check. I think I need to also just play a little bit better too. A couple times that I've played against these guys, I've tried to be a little too cute with some of my plays. I think Life Orb Lapras is very uncommon, and so I need to lean into that a little bit more. I shouldn't say very uncommon, but it's more uncommon than Light Clay. So people might be expecting Nuzzle on Raichu, but they may not be expecting Nuzzle plus excuse me again, goodness. Nuzzle plus a Life Orb boosted water attack that knocks out their Charizard. So yeah, I could consider changing the Incineroar to a different fake out Intimidate user like Hitmontop or something, or just a different Intimidate user like Landorus as well. That would help out a lot. But I've really liked Incineroar on this team, so. Yeah, but that's going to do it for this. For this video. It's a bit of a longer one, but I just wanted to talk about Sun. Hopefully, if you guys want to use some Sun, you enjoy this content as well as how I plan to beat it. So, yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all in the next video.